Ilario Maiolo. Like, it doesn't get much more Italian than that.
Three vowels in a row in the last name. A-I-O.
You know it has to be from somewhere in Europe.
It's I've already someone thought it was a spelling mistake once because they said that you can't have three vowels in a row. I'm like,
joke's on you.
Exactly, you can.
You grew up here in Saint-Léonard?
I grew up in NDG, but I had a lot of family in Saint-Léonard, and my dad was runs a community services organization. My mother had a business here, family, lots of stuff. So it's always been like a second home.
You know, I used to come to Saint-Léonard quite often. I was among the very few Greeks that knew what Saint-Léonard was. Is.
There is a Greek community. I think it's not huge, but I think it's about from the 2016 census. I think it's about 800.
Yeah, it was probably much less back in the day. We had very close family friends that lived here, so we used to come here very often. I used to spend a lot of summers here, and I was always amazed with how many parks there were here and how easily back then, right? We're talking about in the 80s and early 90s, the bicycle paths that didn't exist in Montreal, or very few in Montreal. Saint-Léonard had them already back in the day, and I remember that. It was very like family oriented, very very much concentrated on green spaces and family activities. It was an amazing thing, I remember.
You're right about the parks. It has a number of parks, but not only just a lot of them, but huge parks.
Yeah.
And there's a whole social life that develops around them for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
You ask people who grew up around the parks, they were like always there. But then for the seniors too, there's these clubs in the parks, which I say, they recreated in a certain way the piazza of Italian towns or European towns, except you have snow and ice here, so they have pavilions. This club here, La Ville Versière, I was just here the other night, 9:00 at night. I was invited by an old age club, 3 old age clubs, which are having their dance. So the average age is, I think 68. They told me is the youngest person there. So my wife and I were there. We were having fun dancing, and
isn't it amazing to see that energy?
You expect, that's what I kind of told them. I said, you expect, your old elderly Italian grandparents to be either knitting or praying on a Saturday night. Meanwhile, they were dancing, and there was even a Lady Gaga impersonator who came in to dance. So I was like, I don't think your grandkids have any idea what you guys do on a weekend.
Because I worked for a long time in an area where the population was aging, and I saw some very sad things, right? You go knock on doors and you see how our seniors are growing old, and they're living in loneliness and, concealed to that little apartment. And the fact that these clubs exist, it's such a huge difference in character, in their well-being as well. It's amazing to have these organizations here.
Absolutely. They look up to it twice. They look up to going to the clubs. They dance. It's their physical and mental health, and I think it's extremely important. It would be interesting to have a study to see $1 put into this type of activity, how much does it save healthcare systems in the long run? Because there's taboos in the society, and especially among cultural communities, we don't like to talk about elderly depression, but you see it. Isolation leads to that, and there is a lot of it, but these clubs help de-isolate these elderly people and really serve the community in a great way. Now, the great thing would be to bring some young to get that intergenerational cross, which
is also very difficult to achieve, right? I mean, the young generation doesn't really necessarily want to be participating in seniors clubs. They don't want to feel like they're getting old or whatever it is. But there are some clubs that have worked hard on creating that link. Like you're saying, they're working with schools and with youth activity centers, and I don't know if you have that over here. But
yes, there are some, but I think there can definitely be more to be done with these clubs. I mean, when you were talking about the area being family, you see these long balconies everywhere. They were developed, even the urbanism of the area was developed in a certain way that, you had the parents there, the kids playing in the street at one time. And you still do. Except it's no longer the parents watching their kids, it's the parents watching kids of someone else. So it does lead to a good dynamic in terms of the relationship between the different generations.
I agree. Let's talk a little bit about you. I just found out before we went live that we went to the same high school, and that was a
yes, we did.
To that reality.
Yeah, 1 year, went to Collège Stanislas. I went from kindergarten to the end to basically
I just came in high school, and it wasn't the easiest for me either. Very tough school.
It was tough,
but it was a good school. I mean, I'm not here to bash anyone.
No. Are you kidding? Some of it's. I still look back with very warm feelings.
Yeah.
And I thought I recognized your face. That's why I was like, I know this guy somehow.
There's not too many people with that kind of complicated name. I mean, it must be him. So you are a lawyer. You graduated in law.
Yeah, I studied. I did my law degree at my law degree is common and civil law at U of O. Then I worked a bit, and then I went to do my master's in international law at the University of Geneva.
So where does politics come in here? Well, talking about a little bit about that decision to jump on board. Is this your first experience in active politics, or were you at all involved in the past?
I used to be involved with the Liberal Party. I was, for my riding, I used to be the youth director for many years. Did campaigns as that years ago in the early 2000s. But as a candidate, as the person in the line of fire, first time, and it's been absolutely great.
Yeah, you're almost halfway into the campaign. Tell me how it feels.
It's fun. There's great people around me all the time. There's the energy is there. You feel that the wind is in the sails. But above all, the best part has been working with a great team, meeting the great people of the riding, you really. Nothing really prepares you for a campaign because you don't realize how demanding it is, but how fun it is too. People think that it's demanding and it's grueling. There is that, but it's so fun to just go out. Yeah,
I agree with you. I think it's outweighed heavily by the fact that it's so exhilarating to be on the ground, to meeting all sorts of different people. And we got to be honest here. Not everybody's going to agree with you or support you, but at the same time, the fact that you're interacting with these people and exchanging and getting their feedback, whether it's supporting you or not supporting you, is irrelevant. The fact that people seem to be engaged and have an opinion about public affairs, at least for me, maybe I'm weird saying that.
No.
Like, what are you talking about? Politics is boring. But at least for me, that's how I've always felt. I mean, it's good to have people that are engaged and are aware of what's going on.
You're absolutely right. I mean, not everyone agrees with you. Well, two things. Not everyone agrees with you. But then again, if you want to represent people, you have to really put yourself in the mindset. You're going to have to represent people that you don't agree with. You have to be the representative of all the people of the riding. You're not just the representative of the people who elected you, number one. But number two, the other thing that I'm surprised is, when you go door to door, you think that, you're going to get a lot of doors slammed in your face. People are extremely receptive.
They're very respectful too. Yes.
And receptive. And frankly, one of the things in this riding, because it's been liberal for a long time, the fact that they see someone at their door who's not a liberal, or someone at their door at all, sometimes it's wow. They could. I've had people who disagreed with me, but to say I've had doors slammed in my face, not really.
Are you saying that this riding has been taken for granted for a long time, and there's been this ignorance to either campaign or to go meet the people?
I think that's the truth. That basically this riding has been taken for granted for a long time, and if politicians don't have to work for a vote, they will not. It's been liberal for a long time, and that's one of the reasons that I've switched from the Liberal Party to the Conservative Party, is that I've seen for many years. I was working in Ottawa, and I saw how certain parties take groups for granted. They're like, well, they're going to vote for us anyway. So in the end, I believe in competition. Competition is good for many reasons, including in politics. When politicians compete for the citizens' vote, the citizens gain in the end.
Well, let's talk about that, because this riding has been subjected to a lot of media attention since the beginning of this campaign. A little controversy with the Liberals' choice of candidate. He was tossed aside because of some anti-Semitic comments. They brought in kind of urgently a new candidate, that sort of thing created a commotion. The previous Liberal candidate decided not to run independently. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of factors to consider in this election, in this specific riding.
Absolutely. So there's all those happenings and what I call palace intrigues to why people were moved and everything. But in the end, that has created a bit of division within communities and between communities. And that's a problem because pitting communities against each other is never good. So I've been going out, meeting different communities, trying to bring groups together again. And so there has been all this commotion and movement. But the other thing, I think people have also realized that they've been taken for granted. And one thing I hear is that also their platform, the conservative platform, responds to what their needs are.
Seems to be resonating, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people tell me, Ilario, I'm getting by, but I'm not getting ahead. They hear the economy's doing well. It's a there's a lot of a big working class population, and all they hear of the economy's going well, but then why isn't it working for me? So they recognize that they really hear something they feel in everyday life in the message. And so that's part of it too.
So you're on the ground, you have people calling, people at your office. Give me a little bit about the messages, just on a strategic point of view. Do you think there's a possibility that this candidate now that decided to run independently might swing some vote his way, create sort of split and help you kind of go through?
There's all sorts of political discussions and strategies. My focus has really been to go to door, meet people. I've been on the ground before all this happened.
It's true. You were there from the summertime, so you had a head start in the campaign.
Exactly, and we've been meeting people. And even before all this happened, people have been telling me, Trudeau, it's just not working for me. And even people who voted Liberal last time said, I voted kind of reluctantly, just out of habit, but not really because I believed in what I was seeing. And now I think they feel that they have an alternative, and whatever is going to happen, I think the people want change. That's one message that's been very, very clear.
What other messages are you getting from the ground?
Well, so as I said, there's the economic message that I'm getting. It's the riding is very, it's kind of a microcosm of Canada. It has, its majority cultural communities, Italians, Arab speakers, people from the Maghreb, Haitians and Latinos. And when you're an immigrant, you basically you integrate into the country, but you're also looking out, in the sense the international affairs really influence your vote, probably more than people like who've been born here, because you realize that you've chosen Canada as your country, and you realize that the reputation of the country is extremely important. And one thing I've been seeing is that people are tired, we're very upset about the image that Justin Trudeau is projecting abroad. So the India trip, it's in Italian we call it la bella figura. He's not been doing la bella figura. He's been, and that I also hear quite a bit. Then it's a riding where there's a lot of elderly too. Actually, it's an interesting riding at that point, because you have two poles. You have a very young population, and you have a more aging population above 65. And from what I've been hearing from the over 65s is that they have to be taken care of more. I mean, I've heard stories that there's elderlies in certain parts of the riding who at the end of the month they have to walk a bit fast by the food counter, by the meat counter.
See, the reality also is that the seniors, it isn't what it used to be like in the 80s or 90s. People are living past whatever expectations we had in those years, right? People are healthier. The health conditions have gotten better. So life expectancy has gone up. So our seniors are staying alive longer, right? So.
And also family dynamics have changed. People move away. Absolutely. So these are all new realities we have to take into account when looking at the way we offer programs, the way we fund our programs, making sure that they meet these new, the fact that people are living longer.
Let's talk a little bit about the platform, because we're talking about it again before we went live. it just sucks that this campaign, and I've seen a lot of campaigns, and you can always expect a little bit of batching, a little dirt to fly in the air. But I don't know if it's just the way I'm seeing it. It just feels that this campaign has very little to do with content and a lot more to do with personal attacks. I mean, Justin Trudeau went through it, and now we're questioning if whether or not Andrew Scheer was a licensed insurance broker or not. I mean, there's a lot of mud flying.
Well, it's important to understand, the character of the person you're voting for. I mean, purely personal attacks for political gain, I'm not a very big fan of. Obviously, the platform is very important. People should be focusing on that, and also, we have to distinguish between personal attacks, which are purely personal, and attacks that reveal something about the person's character. Because you are voting for a platform, but you're also voting for an individual. Mm-hmm. And but gratuitous personal attacks, I think, is what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I think, in the end, that's a scandal is what. It tantalizes people, so I think that's why we're seeing more of it. But I think we have to focus back on our, as candidates, I've always kept it focused on the actual, meeting people, listening to people. Above, it's not just talking to people and telling them, here's my platform. Yeah. It's listening to them, because that's another thing. I mean, I said earlier, people are realizing that it's not up to them to be loyal to parties, but parties must be loyal to them. Mm-hmm. People also are tired of having an MP who represents the party's voice in the riding, or the Ottawa's voice in the riding, rather than the riding's voice in Ottawa. Mm-hmm. And so that comes back to it. So listening to people is really very important to really hear what their preoccupations are. And that's one of the things I say door to door. I go up and say, I'm here to listen to you, what concerns you have. I'm not there to sell a program.
So let's talk about the platform now. Yeah. A couple of days ago, Andrew Scheer announced the energy corridor. Yep. Which it's important in the sense of getting our resources to market from coast to coast. How is that feasible when you look at, for example, the pipeline that the Liberals bought, which is between only two provinces, and they're still having issues putting it through, and you're suggesting a coast to coast energy corridor. You're stepping on a lot of provincial jurisdiction over here. First of all, let's talk about what that energy corridor is, and what it will do.
It would be a corridor from coast to coast where energy products and energies can flow. No, so we're not just talking pipelines. We're talking electric energy, and also open to the future. I don't know, whatever may come. It's really a project a project of national unity that can connect coast to coast, and it's an opportunity that very few countries have in their history to create such a pathway. I mean, it's worthy of what we remember of the Trans-Canada here. Mm-hmm. And it's open towards the future. That's what I really like about it. Right now, we have the conventional energies, but we don't know how it's going to be in the future. And when it comes to the provincial jurisdiction, I think where our leader, Andrew, really is working very well on this energy corridor is really about finding win-win solutions. It's not about imposing a pipeline in Quebec. It's not about imposing. It's about working with the province to find a win-win solutions where Quebec could sell its energies to people in Manitoba or Ontario or elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So this corridor is really a novel idea. Like I say, it's open towards the future. It gets rid of a lot of the problems and the costs of, for example, running power lines in a highly densely populated areas, because the idea is it's going to go in the northern part of Canada, and I think it also creates a lot of opportunities for northern communities. And the way we do it is by finding a win-win-win situation for everyone.
Right. There was this was earlier on in the election where you announced the tax credit for sports. Sorry, not the tax credit. For the maternity leave being untaxed. Yes. Is that, because you mentioned you have a lot of young families in the riding? Yeah. How is that resonating with your residents?
Well, the logic of it is they like it. obviously it's resonating very well. And also the logic of having, money coming from the government and then taking it back, that's always a bit confuses people.
Yeah.
So this tax-free money, it can mean many thousands of dollars for families. So obviously very positive. Also the sports tax credit that when it comes to the tax credit, the sports tax credit, where we want to allow parents who send their kids to do sports as a tax credit, is also being very well welcomed. I think it's great for many reasons. Number one, for the health, but also in a riding which has many different communities, sports is a tool to help people integrate. It's a tool, when you're a kid you're from one community and your kid is playing on the same soccer team as someone else's kid who's from a different community, that can only benefit the whole community, because parents start to talk, parents start to have interaction with one another. It's really that next step. It's not just living side by side, it's living together. And it's that next step into cultural integration and really creating stronger communities.
It's funny that you mentioned that, and I want to just take a moment just to go back to one thing that was done provincially with the new elected government. There was a bill that was passed, Bill 21, which affects a lot of the community groups, especially the Muslims. And we mentioned before the Liberal candidate here is an imam. And he was elected in a nomination. So it just goes to show the demographics in the area, how much they've changed since we were little. It was predominantly Italian. Maybe it still is, but I mean, there's a considerable amount of population that is Muslim. And look what happened. I mean, they nominated back in, after the summer, or in May, a Muslim person to run for them. Regardless of what happened at the Liberal Party, that voice, I mean, is still considerable over here. This bill is obviously going to affect this population living in your area in terms of them finding employment, integrating, a bunch of other things within the community. How are these people reacting? Have they spoken to you about it? Because Andrew Scheer came out and said that he will not challenge the bill. He'll respect the will of the Quebecers that elected the government that had initially promised to bring forth this legislation during their campaign. How is the population reacting to this?
I think they understand the positions very well. That if this is primarily a provincial issue, and it's the population understands the divisions of powers in this, so they understand that this debate is going to happen in Quebec City, and it's up to Quebec to decide, and that the federal government is not going to get involved in this under conservative government. They also understand that a conservative government would never implement such a law at the federal level.
I understand that, but the fact that Justin Trudeau has left that door open, do you think that will have an impact over here?
To be honest, not really, because I think people are really understanding where the fight, should there be a fight, where this issue resides. I don't think it has much of an impact, because people understand where the debate is taking place. The debate is a Quebec City debate, frankly, it does affect lots of people in the riding, but when it comes to the federal aspect, people understand that the federal government has certain roles and the provincial government has others.
Tell me a little bit about some local challenges over here. I mean, like you said, you've been around earlier from the summer, you're campaigning, you're knocking on the doors. I'm sure that people have sensitized you to different issues in the riding, and obviously you probably know them personally as well, having lived here and spent time in this riding. What are some of the challenges that you're looking forward to?
Transportation, continuing investment in infrastructure. We're getting the metro line. We've committed to keep that funding.
Let's just see if that's finally going to happen.
Well, these things do take time, but yes, we've committed to maintaining the funding there. Also, with the residents of the riding, even with respect to the metro line, they've been discussing, the 40, seeing if there's funding that can be unblocked at a federal level to make crossings easier of the highway, the metropolitan. Because right now we're driving in the south part of the riding, where the metro stations are, but the biggest part of the riding is actually in the north of the metropolitan. So looking at that, then there's the general federal issues. As I mentioned, affordability is a huge issue in this riding in Saint-Léonard-Saint-Michel. People are seeing the cost of living go up. The elderly, this is a very local issue. Like I mentioned, the elderly are seeing cost of living going up, and that's why they're very interested in our credits, in our $1,000 over 65 tax credit. So there's some issues which are the more federal issues, but the local issues are that. And then there's security. There's been certain issues related to security. So, but even though it doesn't come up that much, but these are just generally the big issues. But if you look at the really number one issue that people bring up, which is a very local issue, it's the question of transport. That's very important.
But transport seems to be a problem anywhere in Montreal. I mean, we're laughing, but at the end of the day, it's serious. I mean,
it
there's
truly
nowhere
is.
you can drive without seeing just orange everywhere. There's cones everywhere. I mean, obviously it's more of a municipal issue, but the frustration resonates at all levels of government.
Absolutely, and I think all levels of government have a role to play in different. Obviously, one of the things conservatives believe is the government closest to the people know the people best. And that's why we don't like to step on other jurisdictions. But I think the federal government does have a role in terms of unblocking funds and making sure that they're properly funded, because it's not just it's a quality of life issue, but it's also a competitiveness issue. Cities start to fall behind if their infrastructures and their transport infrastructures aren't there. Companies think twice before moving their headquarters. But then it's also a quality of life issue, which is very important. Parents who can't afford vehicles have to bring their kids, or the kids have to go to school. These are all very, we need a good transport system to make sure that they have all the opportunities. And also that's why we want to also bring back the public transport tax credit, which was removed, because people need to take not only having a good public transit is important, but also being able to afford public transit is important.
We're going to close it up. There's some internal polls showing over here that you're way above what the standard is for the Conservative Party in this riding, which is usually hovering around 10%, showing you closer to like 20, maybe even 30%. How do you feel about that? We're nearing the end of the campaign. We're at about 2 weeks to D-Day. How does that make you feel, and how encouraged are you to just take this all the way to the end and see what happens?
Well, I got into this thinking that we were going to go to the end. Obviously, I'm very encouraged. People say don't look at polls. What I keep focused on is what people are telling them. My formula hasn't changed. I'll continue to go out there till the last day that I can, to meet people, knock on doors, listen to them. And whatever happens on the 21st, I'm definitely sure that I'm very confident that we're gonna win this riding, and the real work starts the 22nd.
So, any last messages? I mean, like we said, it seems to be nail biting. We're all going to be expecting those results on the 21st. What message do you want to convey to the citizens and to the people living in this area?
Just generally that change is possible. Not to think that change is impossible, not to fall into cynicism, and for them to join me, because we're going to make history on the 21st. It's going to be the first riding to turn blue on the island of Montreal in a very long time, almost 30, 40 years, 30 years. So I invite everyone to come join the team. We have not only to make change, but also to have a great time, because so far the team has been very dynamic and we've been all having a great time.
Thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I wish you good luck. I'll be following very closely, and I'm going home to take a look at those high school albums.
Oh, please.
I had no idea you're in Stan.
Yeah, I don't think there's compromising pictures of me in high school items.
That's for sure. All right, man. Good luck.
Thank you.